Oh, yeah. Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Bruce's book talk. The title of the book is A Hacker's Mind, How the Powerful Bend Society's Rules and How to Bend Them Back. My name is Arkan Fung, and I am a faculty member at the Kennedy School and the faculty director of the Ash Center for Democratic Governance and Innovation. And I want to start with a few announcements on behalf of the Ash Center. First, we would like to acknowledge the land on which Harvard University sits as the traditional territory of the Massachusetts people. We also recognize the continuing presence of the neighboring Wampanoag and Nipmuc nations. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to briefly review the program. After my introduction, Bruce will talk for roughly 15 minutes, and then Bruce and I will have a little bit of a back and forth for about another 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up for broader discussion. When that happens, there's a lot of people in the room, even more on Zoom, so please raise your hand so that we can conduct the discussion in an orderly fashion. Bruce Schneier is a lecturer at the Harvard Kennedy School. He's an expert on cybersecurity. He's interested in all things digital and increasingly many things democratic. I have a couple of anecdotes about Bruce. One, sometimes I spend part of my summers in Cupertino doing workshops at Apple where nobody knows anything about democracy and they don't want to hear it. I do stuff on ethics and technology there. They don't know from the Kennedy School. And after one of these workshops, somebody walks up and he goes, "Hey, you're from the Kennedy School, right? Bruce Schneier's there." And, "Yeah, Bruce, he has the office next to mine." He goes, "Yeah, you know, when I was a CS graduate student, we used Bruce's cryptography textbook." So Bruce has some serious skills in many, many domains. The other anecdote, I don't know when this was, Bruce, maybe this is about 4 or 5 years ago, and I ran into Bruce in the hall, and I said, "Hey, Bruce, how's your course going? What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I'm having Edward Snowden in my course today. We're beaming him in from Moscow." So he's very, and I love that because we've done a case on the Snowden leaks, but I never talked to Edward Snowden myself, so I think it was probably very, very delightful for the students. All right, so just I wouldn't use delightful, but I bet it was informative, interesting. Yeah. So I don't know how many people have had a chance to read the book or parts of it, but it is about hacking and what a hack is from the kind of world of computers and computer systems, and then using that as a metaphor for hacking broader systems in politics and finance and society, even in our own heads. So it's an extremely gripping metaphor. I first learned of hacks when I was an undergrad at MIT in the late 1980s. And it had a slightly different, and Bruce is thinking maybe slightly older, I think more charming, sense of what hacking is. So the classic MIT hack is to take apart a Volkswagen and reassemble it on the Great Dome of MIT, and then people come out in the morning and say, "How did they get a car up there?" I didn't do that as an undergraduate, but we did manage to take apart and assemble one of the great, do you guys remember Hilltop Steakhouse on Route 128? And they have a bunch of big plastic cows. We reassembled one of those on the dome. This is the first time I've talked about that. So hopefully it's being recorded. Yeah. I think the statute of limitations. I sure hope so. So in the MIT, you should research that. Yeah, I did not. So hacks in those days at MIT had several characteristics. One is there was a premium on creativity. They were super creative. Part of what made a successful hack is like, how did they do that? Second, it was funny. Third, it was irreverent. They all were irreverent, like moving someone's dorm room and assembling it out onto the frozen ice of the Charles River was another popular one. Very creative and funny, irreverent. It's supposed to be hard, like not anyone can do it. And and these two characteristics share senses of Bruce's definition of hacking. One is that it uses the system for rules for purposes other than which it was intended. No one intended for the Great Dome to have a cow or a Volkswagen on top of it. And then second, it has an ambiguous relationship to rules and authority. And so I think part of the culture, it used to be, I think MIT has changed a little bit, it was to be very, very tolerant of hacking by students, because I think administration saw that as part of the culture that makes the whole place successful. Is you get these really smart kids, you want them to be very creative and pushing the rules and reassembling things in all kinds of ways that weren't at all intended. Has anybody spent time at MIT? There used to be this old building there that didn't exist called Building 20. And it was where Noam Chomsky had his office, Josh Cohen, a bunch of other faculty, and it was the old radar building. And it was the opposite of any building at Harvard. It was an old wood panel building, and there was wires falling out of everywhere. And, people just reassembled. And I was walking a friend through there. It's like, this is my favorite building at MIT. And my friend said, this is a dump. How can you this be your favorite? And it was so MIT, because you take things apart and you put them together in ways that work better for you. And that is a deep, deep part of the culture of the place. And that's very relevant to hacking. And so MIT Physical Plant didn't care if you really violated the fire. They wanted you to create stuff, right? In those days, the old days. And MIT administration was so tolerant of hacking. This is in, I think, Jay Kaiser's book, that after September 11th, sometimes MIT students don't have the best judgment. As a hack, an MIT student, the Belfer people here will be shocked by this, assembled a fake bomb and strapped it to herself and walked through Logan Airport because she thought it was funny.
It's not the story.
It's not.
No. It was a blinky. It was not a fake bomb. It was something on your chest that would have a blink.
Yeah.
And it was a thing at MIT. But the security agents were so freaked out at something that was electronic with wires that blinked.
After September 11th.
They called it as bomb. You never
I see. It was never intended. No.
Yeah.
And then the bottom line of the story is the MIT administration went to the mat to defend the student.
That was really good.
It is part of the norms of hacking at MIT and the protection of the fostering indeed of student creativity. So we'll come to all sorts of other hacks, but I just kind of wanted to lay out that background of what hacks used to be, and then Bruce will tell us what hacks are now.
Thank you. We didn't hold it up. I think it has an awesome looking cover. I brought a small stack. Someone said, "Are you going to have books there?" So I wasn't, but now I am. So I think actually the definitions are great, and they're all in the flavor of what a hack is. Let me start with an example. Let's look at the tax code. Right? It's not computer code, but it's code, right? It's a set of algorithms with inputs and outputs. And those algorithms have vulnerabilities. We call them tax loopholes. And there are exploits. We call them tax avoidance strategies. And there are black hat hackers whose job it is to find those. We call them attorneys and accountants. Right, so here's my definition of a hack. Something the system permits, but is unanticipated and unwanted by the designers. Another definition. A clever, unintended exploitation of a system, which one, subverts the rules of that system, two, at the expense of some other part of that system. Right. So this is a subjective term. It encompasses a notion of novelty and cleverness. Right? It's an exploitation or a subversion. It's unintended or unanticipated. But here's the key. Hacks follow the rules of a system, but subvert its goals or intent. Hacks don't break the rules. They follow the rules in a way you hadn't thought. Tax loopholes are legal, right? They're mistakes in the code of the law. And that's kind of an imprecise definition, but it's sort of good enough to work with. And hacks against computer systems are what we normally think about, right? Finding vulnerabilities in the code, things the code allows, but shouldn't happen. But there are also hacks against social, political, economic systems, the tax code, the market economy, our systems of passing laws, our systems of democracy. And sort of my idea is that we normally think of hackers as countercultural loners against big, powerful systems, right? the computer hacker as the teenager in the black hoodie. And that's largely not true, right? More often, hackers are the rich and powerful, subverting systems to increase their power. The MIT hackers are the minority. And even in the computer world, like the best hackers are the major governments. They're not the countercultural criminals. And hacking is how systems are subverted, but it's also how they evolve. And so that's my framework. And I use it in a lot of areas to think about how systems have problems and how to fix them. So I have some general observations. First, hacking is ubiquitous. All systems can be hacked. So in my book, I write about computer systems, sure, but also professional sports, consumer reward programs, religion, religious rules, economic, political, social systems, our brains. So basically a system is just a set of rules, and even the best thought out systems of rules will be incomplete or inconsistent. They'll have ambiguities. Things designers haven't thought of, or circumstances change, new technology. And we don't know how to make unhackable systems. As long as there are people who want to subvert the goals or intents of the tax code or the Delta frequent flyer program or the rules of golf, right, there will be hacks. We humans are originality machines. We invent hacks. So I talk about, I don't remember mileage runs. In the early days of frequent flyer programs, you'd look for ways to get a lot of miles, a very minimal amount of effort. 1999, the pudding guy. In this story, it's someone who, it is an airline, it's a generic airline frequent flyer program. They have a tie-in with Healthy Choice, the brands, and he realizes that if he buys these 25-cent pudding cups, he actually makes a profit in the miles. He buys 12,000 pudding cups, gets 1.2 million miles for $3,000, then donates the cups to charity and gets a tax write-off. Totally, it followed the rules to the letter, completely subverted the intent. There's a story of 1975. There's a team shows up in the Formula One racetrack with a six-wheeled car. And everyone says, you can't have a six-wheeled car. And they pull up the rule book and say, well, show me. And it turns out the rules of Formula One racing are silent on the number of wheels a car could have, because no one thought you could have not four wheels. And this worked for a few years. The board in charge, it's got to have some French name, in charge of Formula One racing, eventually modified the rules. If you go read them today, it will say that a car can have no more or no less than, don't get any ideas, four wheels. And so lots of these examples in hockey, we know the person who first curved their hockey stick completely changed the game. The rules never say anything about it, never done. And suddenly the puck is going faster, getting air. The game is more exciting, way more dangerous. And over the past decade and a half, there have been 3 or 4 different modifications to the rules on how much curvature you could have. Dunking in basketball was a hack. And so all of these things that we think of as normal now started out as hacks. Second observation is hacks are parasitical. These are hackers trying to subvert the goal of a system for their own private ends. And so Peter Thiel has a Roth IRA, uses money from the Roth IRA to buy stock in his company, and gets something like a few $1 billion tax-free. The Roth IRA is designed for middle-class Americans to save for retirement. That was totally a hack. But it's interesting because it's parasitical, it requires the system to work in order for the hack to work. If the government said we're shutting down Roth IRAs, suddenly the hack doesn't work. So interesting examples of hacking to destruction. And I have a French lottery system that was hacked to the point where they just shut it down. A lot of stories in the book about finance, banking, whether it's now accounts in the 1970s or the Dodd-Frank regulations. These have all been hacked. Right? Different companies looking for loopholes to evade the regulation. Financial exchanges, insider trading, an old hack, it's legal now. Front running. And if you're a trader and you sort of know trades that are coming, you can make advantageous trades for yourself before they happen. Certainly all these sort of subvert what the market is for. High frequency trading. This is another general point. And hacks are often normalized. You know, when we think about computer hacks, we think about being blocked, right? Microsoft issues a patch. The hack no longer works. That's less true in the wider world. The hack is discovered and used, it becomes more popular. The governing system, whatever it is, learns about it. Then they either change the system to prevent the hack, or they incorporate the hack into the system. But high frequency trading is normal. Curving your hockey stick is normal. Six-wheel car is not. And there you see the rich and powerful having an advantage because they can lobby to keep hacks that they like legal. So I don't know if you remember, it was Donald Trump tax cuts limited the amount of deduction for your state and local taxes. Widely believed to be pejorative against the coast because they have, high state and local taxes. Well, we all realize that we can prepay our taxes the year before and get the deduction, even though it would be, not a deduction the next year. A lot of people just did that. And the IRS ruled, no, you can't do that. That hack was just ruled as not allowed. The carried interest loophole, which is used by a lot of very wealthy people to evade taxes. We've been trying for a decade to close that loophole, and we're just unable to. And that's sort of the rich and powerful. I talk about monopolies, a hack against the economic system of competition. You think about the notion of companies that are too big to fail and allowing you to privatize your gains and socialize your losses. Definitely a hack against market dynamics. VC funding as a hack. A lot of things you can look at as hacks. And money really matters. We normally think of this again as something the disempowered do, but it's much more common for the wealthy to do it. Hacking is a way of exerting power. A lot of time on legislative hacks. And it's the filibuster is certainly a hack. Invented in ancient Rome, by the way, 60 BCE. That was when the filibuster was invented. I think it's Cato the Elder realizes that the rules say all business must be concluded by sundown. He looks around and says, "Look, I never stopped talking," and it worked. Right? It was totally a hack. But gerrymandering, and then you sort of look at some of the ways legislation moves through the process. And there are hidden provisions in laws, must-pass legislations. There are different ways to hack the basic process of we all vote and the majority gets to decide. Lots of ways when that is prevented. And these are all basically hacks. So context matters. Right? Had hacks subvert the intent of the system, the question is it a good or bad system? Lots of times in our society, hacking is a way we institute social change. So it's not always a bad thing. So you spend a lot of time on hacking is how systems evolve and improve, and also how they're subverted. How do we tell the difference? And here the legal system depends on what we use. It's not uncommon that I find a novel use of a law. You say, well, you can't do that. We both take our evidence, go in front of a judge who basically decides. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? And lots of laws have evolved that way. An example I use is trespass of English common law, which was a hack of a law that protected people from trespassing on each other. Someone like early Renaissance, I think, uses it against the government, which was not intended. It's totally a hack. And the court said, yeah, that's valid. And our modern jurisprudence of trespass comes from that. I talked a bit about hacks against our cognitive systems. And I've written about this a bunch, and I've never really in these terms. But in terrorism, hacks are systems of fear. It is designed to make us overreact for a whole bunch of reasons. Think about hacking our systems of trust and authority, social media, hacking attention. These are all sort of subverting these very natural human systems we have to different ways. So think of it as a stack, right? So imagine, someone wants to pay less tax. Right? So we can hack the tax loophole, hack the tax code and find new loopholes. We can go up a level and hack the legislative process used to create the tax code. Or we can go hack the rulemaking process used to implement existing laws. Or we can go up another level and hack the political process used to elect the legislators who vote on the tax code. Or we can hack the media ecosystem used to discuss the political processes to figure out who gets elected, blah, blah, blah. Or you can go hack our cognitive functions that consume the media, used to discuss political processes, to elect the legislators, to create the tax code that has the loopholes. Or you can go down and hack TurboTax. Right? So there's a hierarchy of systems, each more general. And sort of where you are in power is where you can move up and down that stack. So you see that in tax loopholes, but also hedge funds. High frequency trading moves down the stack into the tech. Carried interest deduction moves up. Now we got to make sure that law doesn't get repealed. And in tech, that's hard, but in social systems, it's easier, especially the rich. Right? So Jeff Bezos can buy the biggest home in DC because he wants to be all the way up here, influencing the whole political process to make sure his monopoly is just fine. So I end the book by talking about AI. Throughout all of this, hacking has been human. Right? Humans are the creative people that are finding new vulnerabilities. It is a fundamentally human creative process. That seems to be changing. We are already seeing AIs finding new vulnerabilities in computer code. They're not that good at it yet, but they're going to get better. It's the kind of thing you'd expect computers to be good at, like reviewing millions of lines of code looking for patterns, just sort of the thing you want to give an AI. But you can imagine giving an AI the nation's tax codes, the world's tax codes. I mean, there's the double Dutch Irish sandwich vulnerability that Apple, Google, and others used to evade taxes for a bunch of years. Is the tax law, we get this right, of the United States, the Netherlands, Ireland, and a Caribbean offshore tax haven. And so 4 tax codes together have an emergent vulnerability that allowed Apple to avoid paying US tax. Hooray. Now, that's hard to find. If we can figure out how to get a computer to look at the world's tax codes, what will it find? And that changes hacking, right? That changes, I think the important things when you think about AI and tech: speed, scale, scope, sophistication. Those are the times when changes matter. So you have hacking coming faster, used in more places, used for more things, more sophisticated hacks. I mean, is there a hack involving 12 countries? Like no human could find because we just can't think in terms of 12 countries at once. But computers can. How computers change hacking, I think, is going to be really interesting to watch. And then that speaks to our governance systems. So I didn't talk about it here, but throughout the book, I look at how we in the computer field deal with hacks. We patch, we red team to find them beforehand. We have a bunch of strategies, and how they apply to these more social areas is real important. What we need mostly is agility. Every month, if you're a Windows user, you download about 100 patches to your operating system. And that's because we have no freaking clue how to write secure software. We just know how to patch it quickly. And that's good enough, right? That works pretty well. But if it takes 3 years to patch the tax code, right? If gerrymandering's been around since about the mid-1800s, and we still can't get it right, this is a much bigger social problem. And if you start seeing hacking at computer speeds and responses at human speeds, it's probably going to strain a lot of systems. Someone finds 100 vulnerabilities in the tax code, and the rich suddenly start paying no tax legally. System's not going to survive that. We're just not ready for hacking at computer speed, scale, scope, and sophistication. So I'm going to stop there, and then we'll talk a bit. Then I'll do questions. This has been a super fun book to write. I love the examples. The number of hacks of the Catholic rule of fish on Fridays is hysterical.
The Sabbath.
Geese. Yeah. Geese were okay because they swim, duh. You were able to eat fetal rabbit because it swam in its mother's. No, I'm not making this stuff up. Who wants to eat fish on Friday? Sorry.
This is great. I don't think we should. I was gonna bring the chairs up, but then we'll be too low. Maybe we just stand up.
We can stand on this chair.
Kill ourselves. No, this is just.
The pictures would be great.
Yeah. Have you counted the number of hacks in the book? There must be.
No, there's a lot.
There's a lot of hacks, so it's worth reading for that.
So I grew up Jewish, and the way we all hack the Sabbath is like figure out. My cousins are like figure out what television they want. They set the timer so they can watch the hockey game. This is not what was intended.
But it's normal. There's more features on ovens now.
That's right. There's a way to use your smartphone on the Sabbath. So technically, you're not allowed to complete the circuit. That's the rule. So if we can make it so you're not completing the circuit, you're just doing everything else, then it's suddenly okay. I know. Don't ask me. I'm not a rabbi.
I got you. Okay, great. So I think the first question, so I think one of the fundamental points of the book is to, which you highlighted in the remarks, is to highlight the asymmetry of it. And the rich and powerful are better hackers, oftentimes just because they have more resources to figure out the effective hacks. And then so they can exploit hacks at the expense of the rest of us. So I guess the first question is for the non-digital, for the public hacks like financial systems or regulatory systems or political ones. What are the strategies for reducing that asymmetry? And I guess the main one that occurs to me is bigger, more capable, more badass government.
In a sense, I think we do need more, the legal system to look at intent in a smart way. Like the original intent has really been used as a way to stop change. There's a point where you say to Peter Thiel, look, that's not what Roth IRAs are for. Give us our $5 billion. There's a point where I think you're allowed to say that. And it's the lobbying that makes that. So it's less that, sure, the rich, I think, are better at hacking because they can hire the expertise to find the vulnerabilities. If I find a tax loophole, I make a few $100. Hooray. He'll find one, so he makes billions, right? He's got more money to use to exploit the loophole. But most importantly is that the rich are better at normalization. If they find a loophole that works for them, they're better at making sure Congress never closes it in a way that you and I are just not. So that's the fundamental issue. With the asymmetry in government enacting policies that benefit the wealthy rather than benefit everybody. And that's been documented in all sorts of ways.
Sure. So an analogy is to campaign finance reform. So people who work on campaign finance reform say that there's a hydraulic principle that no matter what sort of dam you attempt to erect between the world of money and the world of politics, it's just not going to work because money is like water and it will find the cracks in that dam and plow through, right? So that's like because there's hackers who are interested in inserting the money. But I guess my question, so what are the range of strategies to level out the asymmetry?
So public funding of elections is what's mostly used in the world. U.S. particularly, this is a hard case in the U.S. for a bunch of reasons. One, our elections are planned in advance. Election happens in the UK, New Zealand, Australia, Canada. It's like elections called and 12 weeks later they vote, or 9 weeks. They're just so short. So you just don't have that 1 to 2 year cycle where money can be spent. Two, we are such a big country and television matters way more. Right? So the ad spend on television fuels it. Three is the party system. The way the U.S. has parties, we're independent, with the parties, there's less discipline. This means that money matters more. There's a fourth I can't remember. So the answer is generally public funding, but I think fixing some other things.
Not just for elections, just the asymmetry generally, finance or whatever.
Public funding feels like the smart answer. It's a hard one. Because why should we pay for that election? Because you get a better election.
Yeah. And the U.S. is an outlier.
We're total now. We have also an outlier in not having a professional class of people who run elections. Elections Canada is the one I'm thinking of. But Japan has one. Australia has one. Right? A professional organization that runs. Mexico has one, which is gutted. like last week.
Right.
And we don't have that. So our elections are based mid-century threat model, which is like, I need someone from my party and your party. We watch each other at the polling place, make sure no one pulls any shenanigans. It's not the way election fraud happens these days. So that old system of we're just watching each other doesn't work.
So I wonder if at some level, your answer is that there's nothing there's nothing really you can do about the asymmetry other than eliminate the asymmetry. Like, so just like too much inequality is the problem.
I think that's certainly one of the problems. Yeah. And tech will magnify that. I think this is important. The AI systems that are being run are not, we get to play with ChatGPT because the company is using it to make it better, not because they like us. These AI systems are being used by big corporations for their interests. They'll be used to sell you stuff.
Right. So then hacking is just this, it's not just, it is an important element of the vicious cycle of increasing inequality.
And so when I think about hacking, it's the inequality gets you wealth, which you convert to policy, which allows you to create more wealth, which allows you to convert to policy. It's that wealth policy cycle that you're seeing, like companies like Uber do, make sure the laws allow us to make more money, so we can have more laws to make us more money.
Right. So most of the hacks in the book, I think most of them are bad hacks in that they're parasitic, in that they increase inequality or unequal advantage. Some of them are hacks that generate good innovations that benefit all of us. Is there anything that separates one category from the other? And what are some examples of good hacks in the sense that they generate generalizable innovations, that once you normalize them, they're good for a lot of people?
So I think there's nothing except moral. I try to look for a way to prima facie divide the two.
Yeah.
So if you think about, hacking the laws of marriage to make them more inclusive, that was totally a hack. Right. And it was like, this is a good idea. What's the difference when you first see it? There's nothing. Why is the hack of trespass law? Why was that good? Well, it's obviously good now, a bunch of centuries on. But at the time, we didn't know. I mean, I think of all the hacks of Judaism. This is a 2,000 plus year religion. It's got to survive in 2020. They got to figure out some way that you can carry a key on the Sabbath, even though you're not allowed to carry on a Sabbath. Hack, by the way, is to make it into a piece of jewelry. That's totally the hack. Right? But you got to figure out something because people need to lock their doors.
So that's a robustness hack.
That's right. So these hacks are allowing systems to evolve.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Right.
So there's don't be started on the error, which is a total weird hack.
Yeah. I mean, so there are hacks that are for my own advantage. And some of the hacks may also contribute to a robustness of a religion or another system.
Or a system that just needs to evolve to present circumstances, and changing the rules is hard.
Yeah.
You go try to change the rules of your religion. It's super hard.
Yeah.
Even if you're Pope, it's hard.
So this one goes to so this is another question about the asymmetry. So the powerful are more capable of making rules that advantage themselves and more capable of making hacks that advantage themselves. So if you could somehow turn up the prohibition on hacking or make hacking more stigmatized, would that be better or worse for inequality? Because the powerful also make the rules.
So I think it's better. I think it's harder to make unequal rules. You try to pass an equal rule, right? You get a lot of pushback. You pass a rule
that's more public.
Yeah, you pass a rule that looks equal, but because of the way there's a comma here, half a sentence there, I don't have to follow those rules. I think it's easier. It's more palatable because you sneak it through a side door.
Yeah. And then is there anything to be said for the morality of good versus bad hacks other than some prior account of what the good or bad consequences are, or good or bad purposes are.
I think there is, I don't know if I'm the person to say it. I kept trying to grasp at it, but it's sort of so far afield. I think there is something there.
Yeah.
I mean, ethical about system evolution, about how things change, adaptive circumstances, how we as a species get more moral, more ethical, more inclusive over the centuries. I mean, there's stuff here.
Yeah.
But I was never able to codify it into something I thought made sense. But I do think there is. I think someone other than me is going to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading your book, I was thinking about, well, I can't think of ways other than by reference to some other ethical account. So if you think Edward Snowden's hack was ethical to get the data, it was ethical because the system that was enabling mass surveillance was undemocratic.
So,
and so his hack was democracy corrected.
You generally appeal to some larger system.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm hacking this because this is unfair.
Right.
Or I'm hacking this because I don't like that I'm paying tax.
Right.
You know, I don't like that. You won't let me like be a monopoly.
I'm a libertarian. I don't think anybody should pay tax.
But someone has to.
Yeah,
actually, no. We all want everyone to pay tax except us.
Right.
Remember the rule, right? We want everyone else to pay tax.
Yeah, right.
It's just not sustainable.
Yeah. Right. And then maybe on the AI. So I think you make a pretty big deal in your book between the rules of a system and whether you're violating those rules or not. Like the crazy AI Go strategy doesn't violate any rules of Go, but no human ever would have thought of that strategy. So you make a pretty big distinction between what the rules are on one hand, and then a level above that, what the norms and intentions of the system are, right? And so I guess, first of all, could you say a little more about that? And then second, I think, I don't think anybody that I've read has proposed this for ethical AI, but is there a possibility of introducing a norm and purpose level to the AI rather than in addition to the rule level?
So people do propose that. It's called value alignment. Right? How do I build an AI that mirrors values? There's some overarching system. So there's two things that came to mind when I thought. So I just saw a video this morning. This is a hack by an elephant. It's in Thailand. I'm not making this up. There's an elephant crossing sign on the road, so elephants have the right of way. This elephant figures out when a truck with sugarcane comes rolling by, it goes to the middle of the road, stops the truck, grabs some of the sugarcane, and lets the truck go. Totally hacking the rules. Right. Elephant crossing is supposed to cross. That's what it figured out how to turn this into a tool. Yeah, my point. It was such a good story.
Intention.
So
as distinct from the rules.
So I think that's right. So you're always looking at the norms, and that's how we figure out. Peter Thiel violated the norms of the Roth IRA. I have a bunch of stuff in my book about children are natural hackers. Yeah. They think out of the box. They don't know what the box is. Right. And it's a great stories of them hacking all sorts of prohibitions against them communicating in social medias. They never allow kids to talk because of child predators, right? You're terrified of that. So, but they always figure out ways to communicate. So I do think that AIs will change us in ways we're not sure. They'll come up with novel strategies. The Go example is a good one. It will find hacks that are being done faster. It's changing things. I'm not sure how, but when you take a human creative process and scale it to computer speeds, things get different.
Yeah.
And I don't think we know how they're going to get
different. Yeah. So, right. I mean, the ethical AI is a long and rich discussion.
But it is being done.
Yeah.
Right. Can we build an AI to mirror our values? There's two different ways to do this. One is to tell the AI what our values are, like good luck. The other is, can the AI figure out our values from watching us in action? just like good luck. So I'm not sure how this is going to work, but those are the two sorts of ways
Well, I mean,
that we were thinking about
That's
doing
kind
it.
of the training set problem, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of assholes out there that's training on also.
And you can see the aggregate of them in ChatGPT.
Yeah, right. So I mean, on the ethical layer, you'd have somebody score ChatGPT, if they're writing Mein Kampf, no, that's bad.
Unless you want one.
Right. Well, that's the ethical judgment, right? So you pay a few chapters of the book are devoted to hacking our minds and cognitive hacking. So is there any, I'm asking this because a lot of public policy students are very engaged in nudging. There's a whole behavioral insights group. Is hacking our minds ever okay?
I think parts of nudging are okay. I mean, having like the healthy food in the cafeteria easier to get to.
Yeah.
And those feel, and again, so what's the intent?
Yeah.
So if Facebook is hacking us so we become more partisan, because that's what keeps us on the platform, that's a huge, for them it's a good idea. For society, it's huge negative externality.
Right, yeah.
So we don't like that. But if we're being hacked to, save more for retirement, maybe you think about the way we see nudges being used in public policy.
Yeah.
And so now it depends on intent. And this is actually a tough stretch for a metaphor, because what's the intent of our systems of authority? These are not designed systems, these are evolved systems, they don't really have intent. So I'm pushing my metaphor here.
Yeah.
But I think it mostly works.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think the ethical question is an acceptable intent to do what's good for me, which is the cafeteria, hiding the cookies and chips and putting in front the vegetables and the fish.
Actually, that fails completely with me because I get there's a cookie in here somewhere.
So that's the consequentialist. That's a welfare consequentialist. I just want to be free. I want to make my own decisions. If my religion requires me to fast and my nutritional level,
although we know
I want to be free to do that.
And we know that rarely do you get an unconstrained. So someone's going to be nudging you. Do you want Facebook to nudge you?
Yeah.
Or do you want HKS to nudge you? Someone's going to do it, right? But there's no neither.
Yeah.
You got to put the vegetables somewhere. It might be just like the person who's setting up the cafeteria this morning gets to nudge you.
Yeah.
Someone will put the vegetables somewhere and the cookies somewhere else.
I reject that. So
they're in 3D space in that cafeteria. They're going to be put somewhere.
30-second design exercise for you nudgers. So right now, when you go get a driver's license, almost all of them are nudging you either to donate your organs or not to donate your organs in the case of a fatal accident. And so you check. Some of them are opt-in.
So what is pre-checked? What is opt-in? What is opt-out?
What is opt-in and what? So 30 seconds, design a driver's form that does not nudge. And this is only to respond to Bruce. Bruce, your response is, well, somebody's nudging you no matter what. Mine is, well, no, if you're clever, you can empower me to choose rather than nudge me one way to harvest my organs or not harvest my organs.
Do we want his organs?
Two check boxes. You have to read both and check one, right? So that is.
But which one's on top?
Randomize it. Right? Yeah. Right.
We're doing a lot of work here. And this was an easy one.
Yeah, that was an easy one. That's the most easy one. Okay. All right. So that's great. I think we should open it up for questions. We have about 25 minutes left. And then on the Zoom as well.
Which we rumor had like 100 people on the Zoom. Hi, everybody. We had sandwiches.
Open up all right. Yeah. Who had it? Yeah.
Hi, afternoon. Jacob Drashina, HKS student. I'm wondering, whenever you're designing, looking from a policy perspective, do you think in your book and examples, is it better to strengthen the system and the rulemaking process so that you could, let's say, delineate all these various derivations of what in ways that people could bypass it, or the, let's say, adjudication side to where you have this adjudication by, like you said, with the IRS just saying, no, you need to pay the $5 billion in assessing original intent?
I think that we need to be more agile. Certainly it's not either or, you want to do both. I think the lesson is that you'll always be able to find hacks. So the example I use in the book, I actually talk in the AI chapter. This is the King Midas story. Now you remember the Midas story. So Dionysus grants Midas a wish. Midas wishes everything he touches turns to gold. ends up starving and miserable as his food, drink, and daughter all turn to gold untouched, right? So totally a specification problem. Midas programmed the wrong goals in the system, right?
Bad choice.
But this is also true about genies who are maliciously pedantic about wishes, right? And then will always be able to grant you the wish in a way you wish he hadn't. So genies can always hack your wish. And I think that's true. All systems can be hacked. And as the system gets more complex, it gets easier to hack. There's more things, there's more dependencies, more interrelations. The US tax code is an enormous behemoth. And you're not going to be able to delineate everything beforehand. So agility. And so it's agility in rulemaking and in saying, look, this wasn't what we intended. This goes against the spirit of the rule. And yes, you're right, the comma's in the wrong place, but it goes against the spirit of the rule. I think that's going to be a better way to do things. Now, it requires a good appeal to moral and ethics. Because, suddenly gender hacking goes against the spirit of the rules. But it turns out the rules were too restrictive. And now, it's a better world. So how do we know the difference between what that and what Peter Thiel is doing? It gets hard. But I think we have to empower judges with that authority and hopefully get wisdom. I don't think there's any other way to make it work.
Yes. So, overturning Roe v. Wade, it took like 50 years of campaign by the Christian right. Was that a hack, or is the time frame too long? Or
Yeah, I know. Is or isn't? There's always a lot of stuff in the gray area. I'm not a philosopher. My definition is not precise. You could argue it was a hack. Just sort of the long-term attempt to, sneak judges onto the court who say one thing when they're going to do something else. I don't know. I wouldn't use it as an example because it's not clean. Also, examples that are politically charged are much less good to use in your book. Never use guns as an example for anything. How good it is, because half your audience is going to stop reading, no matter what you say.
Yes.
So, if you could say your name and then kind of what part, where you're from.
So I'm Carly Winkler. I'm Australian Research Fellow in Belfast Center.
Oh, great.
Part of the Recommended Captain Program. So I guess my question gets to globalization. You talk a little bit about when you start going internationally, you can have this system of rules that, in the tax code pile 4 countries together, and then it makes loopholes that no one really knows how to fix. Because no one is inherently in charge of all of those little things. So given that we're kind of moving in this direction, this massively globalized world and things on the internet, obviously designed in a way that has no one in control of any part of them, who then fixes things? And how do we design some systems where you can? So otherwise, maybe people that we don't want are going to win this fight, and it's going to do weird things to us.
So I think that's really important, right? Because you need a good governance system. If you are in charge of, there's a hack in cricket. Like a few years ago, someone realized you can hit the ball behind your head. It was totally legal, but no one thought of it. But there's a cricket authority. There's a people in charge of the game who will now decide whether that is good or bad, makes the game better or worse. And when there's someone who's in charge, whether it's Microsoft or whoever the World Cricket people are, or Delta Airlines, will look at a hack and then make a quick decision. If it is a hack of the U.S. law, or even worse, international mess of laws that coincide, or the internet, there really isn't a body, and that does make it harder. And hacks do get more normalized, and they stay around longer. Because yes, as our socio-technical systems get larger than our governance systems, there's definitely a mismatch. There's no country with the right footprint to regulate Facebook anymore. Facebook has more users than Christianity. You know that. It's big. So yes, I think that is a big issue. I think the thing is globalization is more the complexity of everything. Just going outside of any jurisdiction.
Any solutions?
It's a governance problem, right? I don't think there's a solution that's hacking in particular. I think we have a real problem of modern governance. That nobody can regulate Facebook. because nobody's big enough. So it's bigger than this.
I wonder, and just taking off this question a little bit, my understanding is in the cyber domain, a big part of it is a cat and mouse game. And part of the answer is more meaner cats that can catch the hackers and patch the holes. But the more meaner cats, I think, doesn't play as much of a role for your social, political, financial hacks. And is that an asymmetry, or should it play a bigger role?
It's interesting. So I think it more is arms races. So, spam versus spam detection, deep fakes versus deep fake detection. So, better defensive systems are an answer there. But the arms race just, it's a Red Queen's race. You do better just to keep up.
I guess I'm thinking my friend who worked at Wage and Hours for the Department of Labor, and his mission in life was to find and nail employers who were underpaying or miscounting the hours of their employees, right? And I think if we had and some of those are hacks, some of them are just flat out illegal.
And if we get more of those enforcers,
like 10,000 of those enforcers, that would help a lot.
That'd be great. Certainly the political party is underfunding all
of
this. But yeah, right, sorry. So the more, I guess,
bigger, meaner cats.
So that's what's more enforcement. Now it depends. If they're actually just cheating, that works.
Yeah.
But if they're exploiting a loophole,
then you need
legal.
Lawyers.
Then we need, we need some kind of labor court that says, look, you can't do this. Right. You got to appeal to some more general system.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I have a comment and a question. My name is Diane Williams. I'm an AR/VR EdTech entrepreneur. Oh. I'm an MIT alum, and I want to say that
did you put a car up in the?
I'm 10 years older than you, so I know about all the hacks, definitely, the cows, the cars, everything. But I think MIT sort of they didn't clamp down on that. I think they're channeling that brilliance into many, many more hacks. I've been a judge or mentor for Hack MIT.
Oh, that's great.
I organized at the MIT Media Lab. I was one of the organizers for an AR/VR hackathon. And we had people I was in charge of, even though I don't have any training in DEI, I wanted to create the kind of tech environment that I wish existed when I was in tech before I became a refugee from it. And by going after people with different subject matter expertise from different parts of the world, different parts of the country, to help close some of the holes when they're creating their hacks. And it seemed to be very, very productive. So I think that's what they're trying to do to find. And we had rules too, like, for instance, I said, I will not help any group wants to help something military, like how to kill people more efficiently. I'm sorry, I'm not going to be involved with that.
That's the first definition of hacking.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I was saying that at least the environment is very, very, it's just since I've been in school, it's just amazing. It's like hacks every week going on. So my question for Bruce is, when I was taking my courses at CSAIL, there was I never was taught how to write secure code. Is that possible to compete with the market when you're building something that has to go, people say, just write the code so you're going to get something out to market, versus taking some time to write something more thoughtfully and just to complete. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So that's a viable product or something safe?
It's a hard question. And actually, Biden's cybersecurity strategy released last week tries to address that. And this is an incentives issue. Right? I mean, you could take the time and money to write it securely, or you could just put it out there. This is cheaper and faster, and this will do better in the market. So how do we incent this? And it's going to be through regulations and standards. And you're not allowed to produce code that's insecure. Just like you can't make a car that's going to blow up on impact. Anymore. I get it. So you can design a car that way. Right? Pajamas that catch on fire. Yep, they're cheaper. No, you can't sell them. Right? And it's going to be stuff like that. That being said, we don't know how to write secure code. We know how to do better, but with exceptions like the space shuttle, we just don't bother. and so it is going to be a matter of incentives. And so Biden's document talks about using the government's buying power And we can only buy things that meet these standards, so then vendors meet them and then we all benefit. They talk about regulations, minimal standards, security by design. So those are stuff in the computer world. You can move those ideas into policy. It's, you have to want to do it. Some of that thing is going to be transparency. I think about those hack finding AIs. Like, let's use them on proposed tax regulations. Let's take a tax regulation before it's passed, run it through this system, red team it, right? It doesn't mean they get fixed, but they can become part of the debate.
Yeah.
Because remember, some of these are put in on purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a way.
I have a question from the Zoom, which is that what are the pros and cons of moving toward radical simplification? For example, a value-added tax versus an income tax.
So I think
Simplify.
so I think so. In
Robustness?
general, simpler systems are less hackable. But sometimes you just can't do that. I'm not is a VAT simpler than a sales tax? I don't know. It's different.
Or an income tax,
Right.
simpler than an income, because there's.
The fact that it's
different kinds of income.
and those are all designed to do certain policy things.
Yeah.
And a lot of those we probably want.
Yeah.
So we want to simplify, but not to the point. Like the flat tax is the simplest and probably the worst.
Yeah.
But certainly it is the least hackable, but doesn't mean we're going to do it.
Right.
Because it's not what we want out of a taxation policy.
Because unhackability is not the only.
It's not the only goal,
Not
right.
the only goal. Yeah. Very good.
Give us all your money. Totally unhackable.
Hello, my name is Jose Garcia, fellow at the Waterhead Center. I have a question about whether you consider that it is possible, to fix aggressive hacking at international level. If I take your example of Apple, wealth is increasingly global, international, while tax policy is national. So I may consider that aggressive tax planning by a corporation is an aggressive hacking. But there are also tax jurisdictions that want to attract this aggressive tax planning, and they are also aggressive tax jurisdictions. How do I fix this asymmetry of interest in the international arena from the side of the states, of the governments that would like to fix the planning of other governments?
So this is really hard. Ireland is a tax haven. And they like being a tax haven because they get financial benefit from being a tax haven. So how do we in the international community tell Ireland they can't do that? So there's got to be someone in this building who's thought about stuff like that. So this is that mismatch between the governance structures and the entities doing the hacking. And surely we need to solve this problem, much more generally. I think you're 100% right that often the jurisdictions are allowing the hacks, they get benefits, even though it's parasitical on the larger system. And Ireland as tax haven is a good example of that.
Yeah. Nick.
Hey, Bruce, Nick at the Ash Center. So your 4 S's, speed, scale, scope, and sophistication, those sound very well suited for the private sector. They're going to put a lot of resources behind that. And your concept of the HGS, the hacking governance system, what is it going to take for civil society to be able to respond to those 4 S's? Or what does civil society not have now that it needs really quickly to be a counter to what I imagine is a highly resourced 4 S's from the business community?
So I worry about the tech mismatch.
Yeah.
The fact that the AIs are being employed by Apple, Google. I started with the notion of like an AI that hacks the tax code. We don't get to run it. Goldman Sachs will. It's not going to be here at Harvard.
Yeah.
So we need one here at Harvard. I think we actually need to be able to have that kind of tech available to civil society to, test a new tax law or to, try to uncover tax loopholes that are being used by these corporations. So I worry about the technology mismatch. So I think the expertise will be there. There will be people who want to do this. They're not going to have the ability to match the tech.
There, right?
Yeah, the tech won't be there.
Yeah.
So that's what I worry about most right now, that the way the AI trajectory is magnifying the current power inequalities.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And just to follow up, are there governance structures, how do you balance speed and deliberation? right?
Right.
Because
So,
we need to act quickly.
in computers, we do it with agility, right? We iterate fast. So we realize the system is too complex to model well.
Yeah.
So we try
See what
it,
it does.
and then if it doesn't work, we patch it. We patch it again, and this is like within days, within weeks. I think we're going to need that kind of agility with governance structures. I don't think in any other way. So when I think about systems, is there a system design class in this school? There really should be. I think there are simple systems, there are complicated systems, there are complex systems, and there are chaotic systems. And those are the 4 levels. We in society really tend to try to control complex systems with complicated systems. And that's worked pretty well, and that's what's starting to fail. And the only way we know to deal with complex systems is through iteration, because we can no longer model them with our complicated systems. So I think agility is really going to be the thing we need to deal with so much of what this century is going to do. The systems are getting so complex, bordering on chaotic, that we need to be able to be agile. So I think that's how, deliberative is going to be too slow. So we need to be able to try it and then deliberate as we go, which is really how software works these days. I know it's not a great answer, but I'm not sure what else there is.
Agile deliberation, stay tuned.
Yeah.
We
just made that up. Let's do it.
So I think what you're projecting is the rate of hacking, of socially significant hacking going up. So do you think it's gone up, or is this a AI hinged prediction?
I think it has gone up. It's gone up with globalization, with the complexity of systems, with this notion of if it's legal, it's okay. The definition of moral. If you're a CEO,
that's a social. But move fast and break things is a social normative change, not in the first instance a technological.
But it's fueled by tech. You have more an ability to twiddle knobs with tech. If you were an advertising company 100 years ago, you had ways to do things. It would take you months or years. Your Facebook, you run 100 experiments at once, figure out what works. 2 days later, you got the thing going. You just have your feedback loop is faster. So you have more ability. You have more ability to twiddle the knobs and see what works.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, question from the Zoom. One of the greatest undoing of hacks in my lifetime was the Tax Reform Act of 1986, documented in Showdown at the Gucci Gulch. It nearly equalized rates of taxation among ordinary income and capital gains. So for those who don't know, capital gains are taxed at a fraction of the ordinary income rate.
No one knows why.
Well, we do know. Put out of business armies of lawyers and accountants who created a zoo of tax advantage structured investments. What are the other grand unhackings that benefited well-organized interests of the wealthy and powerful? So I think this is like something that didn't happen, right? We were about to equalize capital gains and ordinary tax rates, and then the wealthy and powerful with the armies of lobbyists come in and
carried interest loophole is a good example. We've just barely repeal it like 3 or 4 times. Dodd-Frank has some really weird hacks in it.
But it's better than no
Dodd-Frank. I think it's better than no Dodd-Frank. But it was, I think, passed with a bunch of loophole. And then I talk about in my book some of the ones that are discovered that just one word is not a different word, and primarily it just means you can just play some games. Those are the 2 that come to mind. Interesting question, right?
Question.
Where we just barely were able to do it and failed.
Time for one more question, if anybody has a question. All right. Thank you very much.
So I do have books for people watching. About that the bookstore is sponsoring.
Harvard Bookstore?
Yeah, maybe at the Science Center though in April.
Oh, really? Oh, great.
And I'm also speaking at